So, welcome everyone. We haven't had one of these for a while. I think the last one was back in July last year. So it's been a bit of a long time coming. There's been a bit happening in the world, and we've had all the COVID and unfortunately all the floods up in Queensland and New South Wales, and it's good to see that we can get together and start the ball rolling again on Go. So today we will be get this up and running. We'll give you a bit of an update on where what we've been doing in the last since our last meeting. We're going to touch on, from a requirements perspective, looking at availability and enabling care workers to set their availability within the app, which also enhances the employee self-service feature that we started off last year with the leave. We will be looking at the carer worker profile, and I also wanted to, hopefully we've got time to have a look at back-to-back facility rostering. And I know, since we've now got quite a number of organisations using CarelinkGo, we've delivered the facility rostering, and we've also delivered back-to-back shifts within CarelinkGo. So we just are looking to get some feedback on how that's going and potentially enhancing that further. And then there will be some time at the end, hopefully, time permitting, to just if there's any other questions that you want to ask, we can do that as well. So we will proceed. So first of all, just an update on what we've been up to in the last, I guess, 6 months. Well, actually, it's 9 months now, if it was July last year. So we released in August last year version 2.3, which was the first phase of our employee self-service, and that enabled care workers to add in leave requests. And those leave requests would sync back to CareLink Plus and enable the office staff to either approve them or decline them. And then that would be processed back in CareLink Plus. The leave would be added, and the shifts would be dealt with and so forth. So that leave request functionality is now available. So if you're interested and haven't yet had a look at that, feel free to have a chat to our sales team, and they'll be able to take you through, and yeah, hopefully you can see some benefit out of that. That was the last full release that we have done. We sort of took a bit of a break in the Go space just to let it sit for a while. We had some other, I guess, priority projects that we were working on in other products, which we put some emphasis on. So we have come back. We have been experiencing, which is not something that I want to hide, but along the way we do come across issues that we have in the application, and we do have at the moment, it's not affecting everyone, and it's only affecting 1 or 2 customers in regards to documents. Sometimes they're not coming down onto the application, so it's been really challenging to identify the issues with that particular issue. So we've just recently released a bit of an e-fix to the application to add in some extra logging. And we also just fixed a sorting issue with the leave cards in the calendar view. So that's what went out in version 2.3 a week or 2 ago. So hopefully the customers that are experiencing that issue, the documents issue, will be able to provide us with some additional logs to pinpoint what the actual issue is for those users that are experiencing that. And then so now we're working towards our next full release, which will extend our employee self-service offering to include availability. So it will enable care workers to set when they're available, when they're unavailable, and that will flow through to the availability preferences in CareLink Plus. We're also looking to enhance our back-to-back offering to include facility rostering, and potentially looking at whether we can cater for SIL alongside that. And from the last focus group, we talked about password reset. We are still sort of progressing with that. At this stage, I'm hoping that will be part of this June, July release. Otherwise, it might be pushed out to September, October. We're sort of, after just releasing 22.0, we've sort of only got a couple more months until that next release. So we're under the pump now to get some functionality in that release. So I guess it's really time dependent on whether we can, I guess, get to all of those items. But if not, they'll flow through to the next release, which will be 2.5 around the September, October time frame. And these time frames just follow in with the normal CareLink Plus releases that we have set. So that will then follow on with the next phase of employee self-service, which will be the employee profile. So just if you're on the call and you have a question, by all means, stick your hand up and ask, or if you have something that you want to raise, yeah, just speak. Otherwise, if you can go on mute, that would be great. There's a bit of background in there. All right. So first of all, I wanted to talk about availability. And as you're aware, from the last focus week we talked about the leave requests and how that was to flow in the CarelinkGo app. And the process that the leave request took was that the care worker would enter in a leave request on CarelinkGo that would then sync back to CareLink Plus, and it would sort of go through a vetting process or approval process where it would be recorded in the Global Assistant under a dedicated section for Go leave requests. And then from there, the office staff would then be able to either approve or decline. So by approving, it would then enable the office staff to then create the leave record in CareLink Plus from the information that's come through from CarelikGo. And then that would be the normal, that would then process the leave, and the care worker would be updated through the Go app to say that it's been approved, and then that would appear in their calendar view. From availability perspective, we would have a similar process, but I'm sort of looking for a bit of feedback here as to whether we need to go through that approval process or whether it's enough for the availability to be created, and say the coordinator might be notified that availability has been updated for the care worker, and so that they can then go in and follow that up. So I guess I'll throw it to the floor and just see whether what people's feedback is on that particular process flow. Anyone? I guess the question is, do you need to interact and approve availability, or is it enough just for it to be created in CareLink Plus and the coordinator be notified that it has been created? Because with availability, it doesn't update the rosters as such, but it does dictate when you are creating shifts and for care workers whether they are available. So if a care worker does create or log a new availability request when they're rostered already for that period, or that recurrence or that time of day, that might have an impact on the roster. So whether approval is required or whether it's just enough to notify you for you then to follow up and to review their roster against that new availability. I guess that's what I'm asking.
Jane, one thing that springs to my mind is they might be available, but it's also how do you make sure that they're not going over their eligible hours. So, you know, there's certain rules around how many hours they can work, and when it moves into overtime and things like that. Yep. That's just something I'm throwing out there. I don't know if that's, you know, if they want to work, you know, 24/7, it's not allowed. for 2 weeks or whatever. So how does that, if they're saying they're available,
Yep.
and that's automatically activated, but we technically don't want them to work because we're paying them overtime.
Okay, so how is that currently done in CareLink Plus to restrict that?
Well, some of the things we've done is put max hours. So, for example, use the max hours against their carer record, as in, that they're eligible for, 76 hours for the fortnight or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I guess the availability is really just creating the preference. It won't affect the rosters that have been rostered. It's not actually creating any shifts or anything like that. It's just setting when they are available to be rostered. If there was a shift that you wanted to fill and you did a carer search, it would look at the carer availability to see if they were available.
So that's what it's actually doing, creating that preference.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So does anyone else have any feedback on that?
Hi Jane, it's Milena from Spinal here.
Hi Milena.
Hi. So for us, for our carers, they would, if they were using it, they would just put the availability in and we wouldn't need to approve it, because it's just setting their time for when they're going to be available for us to roster. So as long as it doesn't impact the current services that they're rostered for, then I don't see that there's a reason for us to go and approve their availability.
Okay, so although it won't impact what they're currently rostered for, I guess if you've got a care worker rostered ongoing for a recurrence that includes a time where they're unavailable, how would you then want to deal with that if they've used CareLinkGo to set unavailability?
Okay, yeah, well, if that's the case, then I definitely want to have some type of alert to say that this needs to be checked. And it's, I suppose it's not even so much about the approval, it's best to make sure that this is them alerting us that they're not going to be able to work at that time. So we need to be able to reallocate that to someone else. So we need to have some type of communication to us to say that this has occurred, that there's a clash or something like that.
Okay, so if the say it was unavailability that was coming through, would it something like a reminder or something be enough, or would you like it something to be some sort of validation to check to see, okay, they're unavailable, maybe check the roster, they've got shifts, then provide some sort of, I guess, alert based on that? Or is it just enough to say a new available unavailabilities come through?
I think if we had some type of notification to say that availabilities come through and it's impacting services, then that information come to us rather than us going searching for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I guess the thing would be that I think the alert that you mentioned before, Jane, would be great, that they've updated their availability. But I agree with, I think it was Melina who just said that, can we get alerted that if there's like a clash, like it with the unavailability sort of thing or something like that, especially if it's an ongoing shift and it's forward. I mean, I guess it's all going to come down to the rules that you all set in your own organisations with regards to, do you have your staff update fortnightly, weekly, whatever, and do they go? If it's an ongoing request, because as you probably all would know, is that you get people that will say that they're available 24/7, which is ridiculous. I mean, there's got to be some rules, I guess, set in place to make that work properly. But I think an alert anytime someone goes in and changes that, alerts the coordinators, would be a good thing.
Okay. All right. So some way to it would be the coordinator of that care worker that would need to be notified. If that's the only person, maybe a reminder is enough, so that when the reminder comes through, that details what the details of the availability have come through as, who it's for and so forth. Or is it that potentially multiple people who have access to that particular person or the team that that person resides in would want to see a visual of that, say in the global assistant, to see all the availabilities that have come through? Or
yeah, I get what you mean. We actually have a rostering team, so we wouldn't want the alert to be going to the coordinator as such. We'd be wanting it to go into the rostering team themselves. So having that alert, I don't know whether we could use the a global configuration to say that the alert goes through to a particular place. Maybe we have a choice and say, okay, either go to this email group or to the coordinator. I don't know whether we could have that choice, if that's something.
Yeah, I agree. I think going to individuals is not ideal. You know, if they go on leave, if they go on, it's a team thing on with the whole, you know, if one person's off sick or whatever, at least if it's a team set up.
Yeah, okay.
And we also have coordinators. So we have branch security as well. So we've got, you know, a client could be a member of multiple branches. So they can have a coordinator against a branch. And then there's also can be a coordinator against it in the client node as well.
Okay. All right. All right. I think that's sort of covered. So we don't necessarily need to approve, but we do need visibility of it. Potentially, if we can identify where the preference for availability, unavailability is, well, the unavailability where it conflicts with what the care worker's been rostered to. And then some way of alerting the coordinator plus an extension of a number, like a group of people that they through an alert, I mean through a like a reminder, is that, would that be beneficial, or is it some other means?
Can it just be done like whoever logs on first, there's a pop-up, you know what I mean? Or whoever logs on, there's a pop-up and then they action it. I don't know how everyone runs, but is that a simpler way of doing it? I mean, there's obviously, I agree with everyone that you can't just tie it to one coordinator, but if a pop-up, so we have a person that starts earlier than anyone else, plus we also have the after hours, as probably most organisations, but the thing is that if it's just a pop-up that comes up that just alerts that there's an update, couldn't that just be, would that be easier to do, to get it done sooner than later? Because it sounds like, but if you have too many steps, it gets very difficult from the back end. So I was just thinking, if it's just a pop-up, like, you know, when you get alerts when you turn on the first time anyway, if there's been an overnight message or something like that, so that pops up. So can it be something like that?
Okay.
I think the only problem with pop-ups is that once it's popped up and gone, it may not come back.
Yeah, I agree. That's just a pop-up disappearing. No.
Well, it won't disappear unless you action it. I mean, if someone actions it, then it would disappear. But if it's not action, it will keep popping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but who does it pop up for though? Like if you want it to pop up for a group of people, then do they all action it? So, and not necessarily that the first person logs on gets that pop-up.
Yeah, but wouldn't it only just go to your department? I mean, every worker's assigned to a specific department, so it would only alert those people in that department, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but we have, for us, the way we've got it set up, departments are attached to managers, operational managers, you know, not just the workers department. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see your point.
And again, everyone's setup's different. I get that. So
That's what makes it hard for Civica.
I do know that from the reminders perspective, there's a varying amount of ways in which people use it, and whether they're effective or not is another question that needs to be answered. But I think we've got enough to understand the requirement, and then from there we can work out a solution how best to notify the people that need to be notified that there's this particular change that's occurred in availability. So I think what we might do is we'll take this offline and we'll have a chat internally and provide, I guess, some information back to you as to what we're thinking might be the best way forward to notify office staff that need to be notified about this particular to enable availability to be shared between people. All right, thanks guys. That was a good discussion. I'll move on now. So I guess from an availability perspective and the flow, once the care workers added in availability or unavailability, is that just assuming, is it just assumed that the care worker, that's okay? I mean, is there ever an instance where you would go back and say, well, no, you need to be available during this period? Do you need an element of saying, of going back to that care worker to say that their change that's come through is not accepted? Or is it just that anything that comes through in that space is accepted and you just need to work around it?
In Spinal's cases, it's just that we need to work around it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's an issue.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else different to that? No? Okay, so I guess from a flow perspective, the care worker would add their availability in CarelinkGo. It would sync from CarelinkGo back up to CareLink Plus. There would be some sort of notification sent out to people that needed to be notified that this new availability had come in. We'll try and see if we can do a check to see if that availability impacts on that care worker's rosters. Otherwise, it's just a notification to say that new availability has come in, and then that availability is created in CareLink Plus, end of the flow. So there's nothing that needs to go back to the to CarelinkGo to say that it's been approved or anything like that. They just add it and that's it. All right. So what I want to do now is take you through some of our Natalie's beautiful UI designs that she's put together. So what we've got here, I'll just get my mouse there. Can you guys see my mouse floating over here? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. All right, so for those of you who are using CarelinkGo now, we do have this carer profile or carer option that's come off, that's been added down here. This was added for leave. At the moment, we only have the leave requests and the other things are read only. We've now added in this availability option. So when you click on that, it will enable the care worker to go into the availability screen. So when they click on that, this is the screen that will be displayed. And it is a list of all the availabilities or unavailabilities that the care worker has entered. So you have this option to create a new availability. And then it would display where they're available, and that would display in sort of a white with a tick and say available. If they are unavailable, it'll display in this pinky magenta colour and it'll say unavailable. I've got the little icon there to say give a bit more recognition. You can see in the cards that they've got the date and time that the availability occurs for. This one is for a period. This one, I think it's ongoing, so you can see it's got no end date. It starts on the 28th of Feb, and it occurs every February. And then you've got the start and end time. So it's got quite a bit of information there for the user to see what they've said as their unavailability. Obviously, when the date, the end date, or the expiry date, when that comes to an end and passes today's date, then they appear in the expired section. We do have some questions around whether how long we display expired availabilities on the device. I'll throw it to the floor again. Is that something that we would just want to bring into line with the normal sync? Date ranges and so forth that we currently do?
Yeah, for me, I think expired is once it's gone, it's gone.
Okay.
And you know, most of the time you wouldn't go looking back for it. So if it's past the current fortnight or the current pay period that you're actually looking at, I think you can just remove it from the screen.
Okay. So if we link it to the period where the shift data is removed from the device?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Does anyone else have any feedback on that? No? Okay. So
can I just ask a question?
Yes.
Or maybe I'm jumping in too soon. Can the availabilities that's been set up, can they be edited or deleted?
So we are restricting editing, but we can enable deleting. And that was one of my questions, whether you want them to be able to delete.
Yeah, because like I just know for myself, watching when I train people on using the system to enter availability times, they make a lot of mistakes when they first start it.
Okay.
So, and I just know that, yeah, when they make mistakes, they just, you know, I just tell them just to remove, delete it, whatever. But deleting it, you know, once they made a mistake, is probably a good idea. As they're just going to have lots and lots sitting there.
Yeah, sure. So we can definitely enable deleting. I guess that then poses the question of how that then flows back through to CarelinkGo Plus. And would it then just require a notification to say that that availability has been removed to that group of people that are being notified on new availability?
Oh, look, I don't know whether a notification has to come back and tell us, because if they've become available, then our employee search is going to find them.
Okay. So,
yeah, I think unless someone else has got a different process. But for us, if you're available, you're available. If you've got unavailable at the time, well, you're not going to come up with our searches. So, and our notification for it is only if it's going to be impacting our client services. Yeah.
Jane, hi, this is Farhad. Just a comment on that one. With this availability or unavailability, if the support worker is already rostered and if they edit or delete their availability, how would that affect their current roster? Would that make any changes? Or if we are not notified, how would we know to remove them from their regular rosters? And does that change the preferences in the system?
Yes.
Or,
so I guess if a request has come through to delete a preference, availability preference, it would have to delete it from CarelinkGo Plus. it wouldn't affect the rosters because it doesn't impact the rosters. It's just there for you to utilise when you're doing a carer search. So if someone was available and now they've removed the availability, unless they're been set as unavailable, they're not going to be automatically set as unavailable. So I guess the way that availability and unavailable is used is sort of, so when you're unavailable, you're unavailable. You cannot be, well, you're saying you can't be rostered for that period. If you're available, it's just, I guess, showing that when you're doing rostering, that they prefer to be rostered during that time. But if you're removing unavailability, you're becoming available, so that won't affect it. But if you're removing availability, you're still available, but it's not your preferred availability. If that makes sense.
Just with all of that, Jane.
Yep.
So just say that people have flagged themselves unavailable and that they've forgotten about it, or what sort of reporting tools? Okay, yeah, there's the employee search you can go in, but if you needed to check when people are available and when people are unavailable, how do you check that? Like, looking at employee search is only showing you who's available, not who isn't. So if you want to know, keep an eye on all your staff, you know, to highlight. So say, for example, you've got a staff member that's available for 2 hours once a week. Maybe they've entered something incorrectly. Maybe they haven't even realised. How do you manage all that, the whole lot altogether? Because I don't know. You still want to keep an eye on your workers. What if that slips through the cracks? What if you still need to make sure that, you know, they might have to work a minimum 20 hours or whatever it might be in some cases. Is there any reporting or anything like that you can?
I would have thought that if you're trying to if you're trying to understand whether your care workers are being rostered for enough time, I'm sure there's reports in there. I can't think off the top of my head, and I couldn't pinpoint one off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's reports in there to show whether, you know, if they're working their requested hours, you know, if they're making that up to that. Excuse me. So do you not have ways of doing that now?
We've had to develop some stuff in-house, our reports, but that's the thing though, not always. These things get developed and then it's after the fact that you go, well, how do we actually check this? You know what I mean? I feel that sometimes is missed in all this sort of development stuff, and then we have to go off and then start writing our own reports and things like that. You know.
So what is it? I guess, I mean, that comes back to you guys. What is it that you would need if you were to implement something like this, where you're giving the option to care workers to set their availability and unavailability? What do you need to be across that from an overall perspective? I guess, is it a report that shows all their preferences, or, you know, what is it that you need to see? How do you need to view this information in a way that can ensure that care workers are being rostered for what they need to be rostered for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, obviously, from a, you know, manager's point of view of a department in rostering, I'm not the one that would be requesting that sort of information, but I feel that, you know, I think that if you've got a report that shows that you've got, you know, staff members listed with these preferences, working they're available this amount of hours, and then you've got people that are unavailable. If you've got staff that are unavailable for the majority of the week, well, then I think that's a problem. And if they're not coming up, that's not going to be any flags to you if they're not coming up in the employee search. Yeah.
So I guess when availability or unavailability is created, you're notified that it's created. Maybe that's a process you need to put in place to say, well, someone's added in availability. let's go check to see what else they've been, what their other preferences are in relation to this particular preference. Are they available enough to be able to be rostered? Have they minimized the amount of time that they are available to be able to get the minimum number of hours they need for a week?
But that's what I'm saying is the problem. If you've got a couple of hundred workers, how do you check every person's? You need a report to say, tell me who's only available for 10 hours a week. Tell me who's only available for, 4 hours a week. They're the sorts of things, they're your exceptions. Yeah. So you can't be going into every single person's roster when you've got a couple of hundred staff. That's when you need to go look at your reporting to see who's unavailable for, more than 10 hours a week, that sort of stuff. And is that something that's considered as part of that?
We can definitely add that. I mean, we can create a report if that's what you feel you're going to benefit from in order to support this functionality. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We would need, I guess, an understanding of what it is that you would want to report on. So if you've got some ideas on how you would want that to look, and I guess what you want to see on that report compared to availability and unavailability, then please send that through. That would be great. Yeah. And we can have a look at that.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait till this is all developed and then run this past the business and then go from there.
Yeah.
I'd say. Yeah. All right. No, thanks. That's good.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a bit. Where did I get to? I think we were talking about editing and deleting. So yes, we can delete. We can't edit. So on the get back here, we've got a back button that will return you to this carer screen. Do we need a little icon here for the care worker to take them into the calendar view so they can have a look at their roster to see what they're currently rostered to? Is that something that you think that the care workers would benefit from being able to access the roster from here, the calendar view from here?
So when they add their, sorry, it's Melina here from Spinal, when they add their availability or unavailability, is that going to be visual in their roster view?
So that is a question that I did have.
Sorry.
So no, that's okay. So I will, when I get to the calendar view, I'll bring that up. But I guess if that was the case, you would, if you had that there, you would want to be able to see how these availabilities and unavailabilities reflect on the calendar.
That's correct. So, but that would give, like if that was a function in the calendar view itself, then yes, I think an icon up there to take them directly to the roster view would be beneficial. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. All right, so when we set the availability, this create availability screen displays. So you've got the option to select available or unavailable. So when you've selected it, it goes green. You identify how often it's to repeat, whether it's a once-off, daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, etc. You specify the time span, so it might be weekly on a Monday from 9 till 5, so they're unavailable on Mondays. And then you can set the recurrence pattern, so it's every day, every week, every what have you. And then the start date when you want that unavailability or availability to start. So as of April, I can no longer work Mondays. So you'd set the start date being that whenever that's to begin, and then the end date. So here we've got it set to no end date because it's an ongoing unavailability, but you could specify to say, well, come June this year, I should be right to go back to working on Mondays. So we've got the option about the care worker can add in a note just to detail, I guess, some reasoning around why they're unavailable or available. And then we've got the character count there, so they can enter in up to 2,000 characters. And then they click on save. It'll do it checks to make sure that all the relevant mandatory information has been set. And then it also will check to see if there's availabilities that clash with unavailabilities, and also if there's overlapping, I guess. So once it's saved, it will then create a card in the availability screen, like so, and depicting all the information that's been set in there. When you click, if you want to view a card that's been created, you can click on the card and it will then display the actual availability or unavailability that you are wanting to view. So that will be in read-only mode. So the banner here will represent the colour and the label that it's been classed as. So this one is an unavailable availability, and it's got all the details, the repeat, the time span, the recurrence pattern, and the note that was entered via the when it was created. There's also the option to delete from in here. So if you want to delete it, you can click on here, and that will delete the availability. There will be, of course, a are you sure you want to delete message, just to make sure that the user is doing what they really want to do. Any questions on any of that? Does that cover everything you need?
Hi, Jane, it's Nikki at Next.
Hi.
Got a question about the beautiful availability screen, but it's not necessarily about availability, just that window there.
This one, yep.
Yeah, if no, the one at the other end. Yeah, that one. With the need for some of us to use cross-functional platforms, would you consider us being able to provide links to those said platforms on that page? I'm just looking at, like, for example, our permanent part-time workforce would need to use a third-party platform to apply for annual leave, but I could see them using leave requests as well, just so we've got it flagged in CareLink that they're not available for that period of time. But what I'm imagining would be really lovely there is a link to that website for them to go ahead and apply for that leave, and where they access their pay slips and things like that. Is that
right? I mean, so are you talking about this screen here?
Yeah.
Yep. That's not something that I have had requested before, but that's not to say that we couldn't do something like that. So so with regards to the leave request, are you saying that you care workers need to add leave through here so it goes into CareLink Plus, but also need to add it in another HR system or something like that?
Yeah, we'd have a secondary HR system that they use to actually officially apply for their leave from their bank of leave that they've got. But yeah, we like to also put them in leave in CareLink, so we've blocked them.
Yeah. So yeah, so I guess to round out the integrations piece and fully implement leave, there is the ability to send leave, create leave in CareLink Plus, and that flow through connect to other third-party systems. So the user could create leave in CarelinkGo, that goes through to CareLink Plus, and then that could then flow through to another system through CareLink Connect. There is some work potentially going on in the leave space in the future to enable where leave is entered in via another application, it comes through into CareLink and then leave is also cancelled in that application, and then it is cancelled into into CareLink Plus. So there's those third-party integrations that through Connect that could potentially service that. I know Nick's done a bit of work in that Connect space, which might be an option for you.
Yeah, but even if it's something that, because support workers, they've actually got quite a few things that they need to log into with us. So I see a window like that as an opportunity to go, well, here's where all the links for that is also centralized as well.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
By all means, if you're looking to go even further and have that API connection, hit us up. We'd love to help test it out.
No worries. Well, I mean, I'm also keen to have to talk about that third party link, because I'm sure that I mean, I know at Civica ourselves we have a system where we need to put all that through, and then it links to our payroll system. So it's not an uncommon thing to have multiple systems, and to provide that easy way for care workers to navigate that is going to be helpful for them. So yeah, I'll definitely, Roop, you're taking notes, aren't you?
Yes, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And kind of related to that, not about availability, but certainly about links, is that there's the possibility to include URLs in the messaging, like clickable URLs. Like, for example, sometimes we send messages out to our staff with just a summary, because you got limited text in the message, and then directing them back to our intranet for the full page. It would be great to be able to click through from that message in Go and land on that page.
Oh, so in the message have the link actually display as a clickable link.
As a clickable link, yeah. At the moment, it only clicks. It only displays as plain text.
Yeah, we can have a look at that to see if that's possible to display that in a different way as opposed to just text. What the effort would be. So yeah, we can definitely follow up on that. All right. Conscious of time, I'll just continue on. So I guess that's the UI designs that we've got in place for availability. Just a couple of things. So we talked about whether you want the unavailability to display in the calendar screen. So I think it was Milena that mentioned before that you would want to be able to see the unavailability. Is it just unavailability, or is it availability as well? What's your thinking on that? Does anyone have any feedback on that?
To me personally, I think we don't want to make it too busy. And the unavailable times probably would be best. And then if it was a partial day, I would say that if we could do the icon as half the normal icon, that would then give the visual of, okay, there's unavailability on that day, but we know it's only partial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you do need to recognise partial or half day unavailability.
I think so, because someone could be technically working on that day, but may be unavailable the remainder of the day.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I agree with Milena on that.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see what we can do in that space. And then further to that, do you need to see the availability, unavailability cards in the roster view? So I guess we've got leave in here because that represents a period of time that they're on leave, and potentially that is also a payroll leave shift. Do you need to be able to see where they're unavailable as a card, or is it enough just to be able to see that they're unavailable up in the calendar view?
I'm thinking less is more, so not to have it as a card, but that's just my preference.
Anyone else?
I concur that less is definitely more. I think leave is good to have it as a card, because if you're a support worker who's checking, well, what did I work and what did I not work? That's good in that instance, but don't want it to be overkill as well. I'm just thinking of our beautiful technophobic support worker.
No worries.
I've got to put in both camps on that. I see, I sort of do and I don't. But it would also be good, maybe if it was if that was configurable.
Okay, and so to that, if you did want it displayed as a card, do you want unavailability only displayed?
My vote would be just unavailability. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you. Does anyone else have any more feedback on that? No? Okay. All right. So further to the availability, do you want to show expired availability records? Okay, we talked about that. So we're going to look at removing the expired records when that period has been superseded by the shift data being removed. And then do you want to delete records from the app? And we talked about that and we said yes. So that's great. All right. Next, I wanted to touch on, sorry, before I do go into the next area that I wanted to talk about, any further feedback on the availability space that we haven't touched on that I have missed, or that you were hoping to see that you haven't seen today? Okay, good. All right, that's good. All right, so next we the next phase of the employee self-service is in regards to the employee profile. So this is mainly just to be able to show and present to the care worker their basic details, but enable them to be able to edit information where it changes. So if they move house, they can edit the address via the application, and that'll flow through to CarelinkGo Plus, where their email, they need to get a new email, they change that via there. Where they get a new mobile number, they can edit the mobile number through here. And I've just added a couple of other fields that might help make the profile look, or information that might help the care worker understand more about that screen. So I put their name on there, their coordinator. I don't know if there's anything else that you would think that the care worker would want to see on that screen that might benefit them from a read-only perspective.
Jane, it's Sharon here from Uniting.
Hi Sharon.
Would this be controlled by permissions? Because for us, the address, email, mobile are all work related. They're never personal. So that want them to edit at all.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, we can definitely set permissions on it to be just information. If you're happy for them to, or read on, or no permissions, so that that information doesn't actually display. We'll definitely add in some permissions around that. I should also mention too that we'll put permissions around the availability. So if you don't actually want your care workers to add in availability, we can remove that via permission so that it's not accessible to employees.
Jane, my question with the address, because we use the mapping module, so if they don't enter the address correctly, then the coordinates will be wrong.
Yes.
So
so we'd probably have to put in some smarts in it to be able to ensure that what they are entering is in line with those rules.
Because sometimes it could be that you type the word in road, RD, and it wants the full word, or court, or you see that quite often with that. Some of that stuff.
Yeah. No, we can have a look at that. Yep, definitely. Is there any other information that you think that would be that the care worker would want to see on that screen, or is that is the coordinator required? Do they need to see that information? Do they would I have heard, actually, now that I think of it, I have heard a number of times that the care worker might need to be a contact number, like of the coordinator, to be able to contact them, or I don't know, anything open to it.
Or the contact number of our help desk. Something like that too.
Yeah, okay. Just thinking. Note
I mean, I
that
don't know
down,
whether this
Ruth.
is the right page for that,
Yeah.
but it's not the wrong page, but yeah, don't know whether it's the right page, but that would be handy to have.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have a look at that one.
I think an alternate number would be preferable. Sometimes they won't answer the work number, even though it's there. So if they want to provide an alternate contact, if they want to pick up extra shifts, that would be helpful.
As in the care worker's alternate contact number, or a
Yeah, the care worker's
contact.
alternate contact number.
Right. So you would, so as in, and the thing is with phone numbers, it's really quite challenging because it's very flexible in that you can add, you can have a mobile phone number, but you can have multiple of these things. So in system maintenance, I don't know if I can actually show you.
Yeah, that has been a challenge for us. You know, where you either have work, home, or mobile. You can't.
Yeah.
There's no way to distinguish work mobile versus personal mobile, for example.
Yes. Or contact phone number. I mean, maybe it's something that we display the phone number and the mobile phone number. I don't know. Open to what you guys think. So I guess when you're entering in data into CareLink Plus, what is generally the types of contact details that are entered in, that are provided? What do you use? Mobile, email? Do you use phone numbers? Do people have phone numbers these days?
Yeah, we still have landlines.
Okay. So potentially that's another field that we would need to display as well, the phone number field.
I get the idea about the like emergency contact contact detail to contact the organisation. I'm just wondering whether maybe there's a way that we can set up a phone number that's linked to a particular department, so that, you know, if the defaulted department of the employee, that department would then display that phone number. I don't know, I'm just kind of like putting it out there at the moment, saying, you know, if the employee is linked to this department, then that department has this emergency number, because we'll have contact numbers for, you know, intake, and then we'll have contact numbers for rostering team. So and they could be all, you know, separate departments as well. So anyway, it's just an idea I'm just throwing out there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Jane, can I just make maybe I'm being a bit silly, but this is an employee profile which is on their mobile phone. So why would we need to have that on there in the first place?
Because I guess over the years we've had requests to be able to capture and enable the care worker to edit their information. They want to be able to edit their address and email address.
We only have certain people that can do in our organisation that can actually change those sort of things. So, you know, their access levels to keep control on it. For obviously, we don't want it editable, because what could happen is that, you know, all of a sudden, because it deletes the previous contacts and all that, so everything changes. So we sort of control that ourselves. I'm not really sure whether that's, from our point of view, that's necessary. The employee profile. That I'm just putting that out there, but I if it's read only, that's fine. If they want to change something, I think they need to go, from our point of view, it would go through our coordinators to update their personnel file. I don't see that as a necessity for them to change. I mean, the availability and leave requests and all that yada yada is obviously important, but a profile, I mean, I don't really. We probably wouldn't use that function, that part of the profile, other than they can read only. Not to allow them to change it or update.
Yep. Okay. Is there Is there anyone that would want the ability to edit that information on the call?
No, Spinal wouldn't want anything to be edited. We have our own employee system, so everything needs to be changed through that and then come through. CareLink is basically our client management system.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's all just read only, and that they could see, and if the information's not correct, there's a button there that they can submit updates.
Yeah, if it's all read only, then they can, and if something needs to be updated, they can let someone know.
Yeah, but I still think some organisations might want it to be editable, because obviously everyone does things differently. But at least if they can see the information and then go, okay, my phone number's changed, and from there notify somebody, this is my new details. I don't know if that would work for people.
Sorry, spanner in the works, Jane.
Sorry, what was that?
Sorry, I threw the spanner in the works here.
No, that's okay. That's what this forum's for.
Like most organisations, we have our own, apart from the CareLink's obviously our rostering system and so forth, but a lot of the other parts of it as well, like you were saying before, where we use other mediums to record details and so forth. So the CareLink could be changed by the worker, but it doesn't mean their personnel file in HR has changed straight. You know what I'm getting at? So there are most organisations have different ways of doing things, but for this to be changed, I think it needs to be, from our point of view, certainly is that they can have it read only. If they want to do any changes, notify us and we'll change. It'll get changed regardless, all the way through to HR sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anyone on the call that would want it editable for that then to flow through into CareLink Plus and through a similar notification process, or is everyone on the same page where they just want to be able to view it in a read-only form?
Yeah, happy with read-only at Northcote.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so by the sounds of it, no one wants to be able to edit it. That makes our job a lot easier. Okay, so we can, we can always look at adding that information. I guess I haven't heard of any other, apart from the help desk. You've made note of all that, so we'll have a look at that and see if there's ways of pulling in that information and potentially a phone number from the department. I'll see what we've currently got available and we'll go from there. All right, we've just got a little bit under half an hour to go. Wanted to talk about facility rostering. So a few, or it wasn't last year, it might have been the year before, or the year before that, we delivered back to back. It was probably one of the first features we delivered in CarelinkGo post the new application and the user interface upgrade. So back to back enabled care workers to start a series of shifts and complete them in one start and stop action, as opposed to going and starting and stopping each individual shift. So where the client was the same and there was a gap, there wasn't a gap, or there was a tolerance of a gap, that's sort of depicted that as one rostering period. It would enable the care worker to start and then complete that shift, those shifts all in one go, and it would process those, approve them back into CareLink Plus. The issue with that is that it is not flexible enough to be able to assist in the facility rostering side of things. So where the care worker is rostered to the facility for a period of time with a number of different shifts where the client is different, it doesn't cater to that. So we are looking to enable that so that the care worker can start a shift where they are rostered, say, from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock with the actual facility, and then at, say, 9 o'clock they might do a one-on-one shift with a client until 10 o'clock. Then at 10 o'clock, they might do another one-on-one shift with another client. And then at 11 o'clock, they might continue back doing maybe group activities where they're not actually directly rostered to a client. So when you look at that, they've actually done a period of engagement that at the facility that could be considered a back-to-back shift. So we are looking to enable that where the facility is the same for each shift, and that the gaps between shifts is obviously in line with the current back-to-back functionality, where it's the end time of the first shift is there's no gap until the start of the next shift, or that there's a gap that's within a certain tolerance to for back-to-back rostering. So that's one element that we're looking to develop. To further that and to enhance the facility rostering client attendance that we currently do. So at the moment, we currently have a feature for facility rostering which enables the care worker to view their facility shift, and then where there are clients rostered to that same facility shift and they appear in the facility tab. So they're grouped together. They're not necessarily rostered to each other, but they're grouped together in the one shift. I mean, in the one group. That you could then go, the care worker could then see those clients from the facility shift in Go and see the client's details and see the client's shifts and mark them off as attended, and that would then, when the care worker completes the shift, that would go back in and approve the client's shifts as they're rostered based on who attended the facility shift, and it would then, the care worker would then obviously approve their shift. The issue with that is too that the care worker has to be rostered for that shift, and the clients have to be linked to that facility grouping shift as well, which is quite challenging, I guess, when you're rostering in a, if I take Sil, for example, I had a look at one of those rosters the other day, and it's so complex. I can imagine how hard it would be for care workers to work out what they're doing. So if we can try and make that a little bit easier. So from the back-to-back facility rostering, I guess I'm putting it to the floor to see if that's a requirement from those of you in the focus group, if you want to be able to, if you have facilities where care workers roster and they're not grouped together, whether you want them to be able to start a shift at the start of their day, as long as they're in line with the gaps and so forth, that they then consider that a back-to-back shift. And then also, so I'll start with that, is what's the feedback from the group on that, in that space, if there is any?
Yes, please. It's a bit of a bugbear because you have someone in working at the facility in the morning, and then they've got to take off with the client for some core supports one-to-one, and then they come back and round it out with a bit of a facility shift in the afternoon. And just that back-to-back function isn't working for them. Technically, it is back-to-back. They're with the same person for those 3 shifts, but they just can't. So if we can, that would be great. I'll hold off on comment about the second part that you spoke of, because I want to hear more.
Okay, all right. Was there anyone else that wanted to make some comment on that first back-to-back facility rostering side of things? No? Okay. So on the second part, there's obviously some complexity, and when I look at a roster facility, say you've got, I don't know, a handful of clients, say 5 clients in this supported living space house, and then you've got a couple of care workers that are servicing the clients doing group, so multiple, say one to 2 or 1 to 3, but then also care workers doing 1-to-1. The issues that we've had and the reasoning why we went down the path of facility rostering initially, where they had to be grouped together, was so that the care worker would know, I guess, who they had to service. So once you remove that grouping and you have multiple care workers in that rostered to that same facility for the same day, it's difficult to know what clients the care worker would need to work with. So I'm open to understanding a bit more about SIL. I have caught up with a couple of customers specifically on SIL rostering to get a bit more information. But I guess from a CarelinkGo perspective, and this has come in, a customer has requested that we do provide a solution to this. But I need to understand from specifically a SIL perspective whether it's enough to have that back-to-back facility rostering feature that we talked about first, or whether it needs to be further enhanced so that the care worker has access to the clients and has access to the client details, which has the client notes and goals and documents and so forth, and whether then they need to be taken to that next level like we do with client attendance in facility rostering now, where those shifts need to be auto approved. So I guess if we can tackle first the clients from a SIL perspective and understand if there's anyone on the line that does SIL, if you can, how you would see, say if you pick one of those houses and how they're currently rostered, how you would see that working if you have multiple care workers servicing one or more of those clients for the day. Anyone want to take a plunge at providing some more information on that?
Okay, I'll take a plunge with a big gulp and a lump in my throat, because that's what SIL can do to you sometimes. Look, we actually purchased the facility management module for CarelinkGo, and we've been in a position where we've not been able to use it, and that's because with how the funding has been structured within the SIL, we've not needed to add the clients to the rostered shift that the support worker would be working. So it's actually rendered it, the big benefit we saw in having the facility management module for CarelinkGo was that you could access that client information. I had no knowledge or understanding of that also approving those financial based shifts by saying the client was in attendance, and that's really insightful. But we just don't add the clients to it because we can add other funding lines, because the name of the service is quite different to how we actually roster the personnel in the house. So we wanted the facility module though, because when it comes to that very important part of note taking, we need our support workers to take notes about how the client's progressing towards their goals. But right now they can only add that to the facility. So we looked at the excitement of, well, if we had the facility module, we could click on the client, then we can click on the client notes and actually add that note to the client where it's meant to go. But because of how we roster, we can't do that either. So I guess I can see some scope with the back-to-back being something that's a bit more tenable, because you can have that access to the client profile and you can add the note that way. But not all the clients will have core supports. in the house either. So our naive suggestion way back was to, I don't know, could we add the client as a who to contact, or can there's something else that can flag the client as being someone who participates in the house, and therefore CarelinkGo goes, well, here's the access and information to the client. But we currently, and we now need to ask the question, do we need to go back to the way we were rostering, even though it was advised, well, now that the SIL services are structured the way they are, let's roster this way. So we've got a decision to make as to how we're going to roster again, because it, whilst the shifts that it will create, it will generate as a result of adding the client on the roster, on the facility tab on the rostered shift, it's just going to create a whole big bunch of superfluous shifts for us that we would just end up deleting anyway, because that's not how we cover the finances anymore.
Yeah.
So if facility roster took you by surprise, I'm sure what I just had to share then probably made you go cross-eyed. I don't know. I felt confused as I was saying it.
No. I totally understand the reasoning why organisations go down the path of not linking clients to facility shifts based on that funding issue and the fact that you can't have multiple fundings linked to the shift. And that was one of the things that made the facility rostering, I guess, limited when it was first developed, is the limitations of how facility rostering is used, and why it's used that way. So I guess from a facility rostering perspective now, and so yes, we can cover off the back-to-back, but I guess when so to determine what clients are then presented, if it's enough to just be able to show the clients and not necessarily their shifts, I mean, is it enough to show the clients that are rostered that day so that you could just pick the client and view their details and write notes and so forth, and then maybe not necessarily have the functionality to approve their shifts? And the complexity comes around when linking the clients to the specific shift that that care worker's servicing, because you don't necessarily know. But then, okay, so would the care worker be rostered to the same service as the clients would be?
No.
No. If that care worker was working with that client?
No, because the client, we've actually, how we've structured it is we created a service that was of no cost to the company, and that was where we would slot our support worker in, and then we would roster the client to the particular service that needed to be invoiced with NDIS. So you had no connection between the support worker and the client, but you're still able to maintain how many people do I need, because we've built the roster of care within the roster rules, and how many services, how do we spread this out amongst all the clients' funding for the house?
Yeah. So the clients are rostered to what they're actually receiving, but the support workers are rostered just to the house for the day?
Correct.
Unless they're doing a one-on-one and then they're rostered directly to the client?
Correct.
Okay. So then is there a need, does the care worker know what they need to do when they get into the house and they're not directly rostered to a client?
Either through the house leader being there telling them, or notes on the staff wall, or shift notes in CarelinkGo.
As in,
or a care plan as a document in CarelinkGo.
Right. So if you had the care worker rostered to whatever shift they were rostered to, and then they had access to all the clients that were rostered on that day to that facility, and then they had access to those client so the client profile, so the normal client profile that you have in CarelinkGo.
Yeah.
Would that be enough to further your use in facility rostering in CarelinkGo, or do you need more than that in order to?
No, that's pretty much what we need. Just that connectivity for the support worker to connect with the client information. So we're not putting it all on the facility. Like we've got one facility, by way of example, they have 7 clients in their home, and they're very astute at note taking. Now that profile has something like 15,000 notes attached to it, because of course, if you're one support worker working with 3 clients, that's 3 notes, because you don't want to mix the information about the clients due to their privacy and security. But because we don't have access to the client, it has to sit on the facility roster. So that's when the house leader will also use a lot of their time to actually link the notes to the client in CareLink Plus.
Right. Okay. Okay. So just a question on that. Sorry, before someone talks in, have you actually loaded that onto CarelinkGo with that amount of notes?
CareLink.Go, yes.
So the care worker's rostered to the facility, and that facility is the one that has that 15,000 notes, and that
the default, we've obviously got that default 30 days.
Oh yeah, okay.
But CareLink Mobile, it would crash it.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just curious about that.
Okay, sorry. For CareLink.Go.
Yeah, I did cut someone off there. Sorry.
Yeah. So no, you're right, Jane. What I was going to say is that we're rostering similar, but what we do is roster the clients to the facility for everything, even the one-to-one shifts. It all gets rostered to the facility. The workers get rostered to the facility as well, but the workers are paid out of CareLink, so we have to we're rostering to services that will pay the staff. So right. Yeah, so it's same but different.
Yes, okay. That's very much. We need those rostered shifts in there purely for the payroll export, and we've already got the NDIS services with the funding attached to actually pay for the cost of the house. But the support worker and the client in that facility tab never intertwine. I guess looking at it, if we don't even look at CareLink.Go, the thing for us would be those superfluous shifts that get created when you do add the client and the support worker to the same rostered shift, because it pushes out, not only does it push out the roster shift for every client that's on there, but it also creates that shift for the client, and that's what we don't need. Does that make sense? So if I put you as my support worker, and then I put client 1, 2, and 3 as my client on the facility tab, it will create an unnecessary shift for client 2 and 3. That's the only thing in this whole process that we don't want. And if that wasn't happening, then we would be using that client facility tab, no issues. But we just don't want to create the mess that can happen out of that facility roster, because it's too complicated to look at, and if your house leaders are doing scheduling, then it's a lot of time taken away from them actually being in the house with the client as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if we've got a care worker, so if you can see this screenshot that I do have, so we do have Celine Dion, who's working at 8 till 9, and it's directly rostered to the facility.
Yep.
So at that point, because there's not a direct roster to a client, what I'm envisaging is having, so when they go into their shift, there would be the link to clients, which would then show Barry Boxer and Jackson Brown and all the other clients that are rostered to that facility accessible via that shift. So then when they go into the next shift, which is Celine Dion, who's directly rostered to Renee Atkins, from 9 till 10, it wouldn't have that list because they're doing a one-on-one, and the same would happen when they've got Celine Dion with James Cook from 10 till 11. And then the next shift where they're not directly linked to a shift, to a client, they're linked to the facility, then they'd have the option in the care workers shift for the link to the clients of any client that's rostered to that day to that facility.
Yeah. Yeah, that works.
Okay,
Because
so
as far as Celine is concerned, she is looking at her roster and having access to Renee, James, and the facility. Yeah.
But in addition to that, where Celine's not rostered to the facility, she would also have access to Barry Boxer and Jackson Brown.
Yes, that's what we want.
Yeah. Okay, so we could do that. We can do that if it's just showing the clients, the list of clients and their profiles. It then gets a little bit more complicated, which it might be worth, we've got 5 minutes, thinking about. So obviously these are shifts, and these shifts, I'm assuming, need to get approved for claiming and so forth. Is that something that if that we could stage, that we would get this set up so that we could at least get the carers access to the client details so that they can create the client notes? And then once that's rolled out, potentially we can revisit it to look at actually approving, if it's possible to approve the shifts down the track and have access to the shift details, or would you need access to the shift details for all of these clients as well? Is that?
Yeah, and that's where I would need to relegate to one of my colleagues who does work more specific in the SIL area, and just being conscious of time, I'm happy to arrange for you to come and have a chat with them and discuss that a little bit more, if you like. And then I can add from that CarelinkGo perspective and how we'd like to see that.
Yep. All right.
Jane, also documents. So for our group, our facility rostering, people that are community access or groups in, and they go out in the community, and it's all facility rostering for this, is that it's not only the ability to write notes, but it's the ability to view the documents.
Is documents in the client profile or only in the shift? Can't remember.
Client profile.
Oh, it's in, okay, that's fine. So the link to the clients would then open up their profile that you would normally see on CarelinkGo. So it'd have all the tabs there, and so forth. So
how is there any way, because we haven't gone down the path of the facility rostering because it wasn't catering for our needs, and like somebody else previously said, they've bought the module but they can't use it. So how do we go about being able to test it to see if it's going to suit our needs before we fork out, before we pay for something that we can't use?
Yeah. I mean, we could always have access to a test environment, or you can trial these features.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, I mean, we used to do trials back in the day. I don't know, Matt, I don't know if we do trials anymore that you're aware of. Are you still on the line?
We can smooth things over with Francis for somebody who needs a trial. Yeah.
I'll ring Francis. I'll follow up with him, and I'll talk to you too, Matt, because one of our areas has been screaming out for this for a long time, that they can go out and see the client's information and their documents, but because of the way that all the facility rostering was working, anyway, that'd be great. Thank you.
No worries. All right, so if we can, we'll just sort of let Francis know that might be coming. Sorry, I know Tracy's voice because I know that she's talking, but I can't see who's actually talking. So who was it that was saying that they would get someone to talk to me that's more in depth in SIL rostering?
Oh, that was me, Nikki at Next.
Oh, thank you, Nikki. Yes. Sorry, I've just got the presentation on and I can't quite see
That's okay.
who's talking. No, that would be great. If you could shoot me an email on that, that would be really good. And we will do definitely do a follow-up on some proposed solutions for the SIL rostering based on the feedback that we've had today and some subsequent follow-ups with customers. So if there's anyone else that wanted to provide some feedback in that space, feel free to email me on janeshields@civica.com.au. All right, thank you everyone for your participation today. Is there anything else that you wanted to discuss today? Anything that on what we've discussed or anything else that you wanted to discuss in the Go space?
Please bring up the we're on CarelinkGo, and previously Carelink Mobile, we had the same issue. 4th of May last year when we upgraded to version 20.1, sorry, 20.3, shifts unapproving. Carelink Mobile, CarelinkGo shifts unapproving. So shifts gets approved. So whether it's synchronised or that's the shift will get unapproved. The office workers approved it because we need to get payroll done, and the shift becomes unapproved and she's got to approve it again. This has been going on since last year. Has anyone else been having this issue?
This is Melina at Spinal. We had this occur, and what I found the issue was that when the data would come back through from CarelinkGo, the shifts were out of tolerance. So if the shifts are out of tolerance, doesn't match the roster, it's going to unapprove the shift.
Yeah, now this is interesting because before we upgraded to this version last year, the 4th of May, that issue wasn't happening. So the problem is, and I get that the data, the back office has approved the shift in CareLink Plus, and then, yeah, I get that the shift doesn't meet the tolerance and then it unapproves it, but that makes no sense.
Yeah, the same happens at Wellways, and the problem is that very few people obviously have access to make changes to approve locked shifts or exported shifts. That's right. So then that shift stays unapproved until someone else, the claims team or something, is notified to be able to fix it up. You're right. It shouldn't happen if the shift has already been manually approved back in the office, and the workers later, because they didn't end the shift on time. Later they closed the shift off the following day. It shouldn't then unapprove. If there's some smarts in the system to recognise that, that would be so helpful to us as well.
No,
what we did to reduce the number of shifts that were unapproving was we created an SMS template that as soon as we had a shift that was that wasn't approved, and we knew that the person had logged in, so we then sent out the SMS telling them that they had an unapproved shift in their roster, and then for that data to come back to us to actually go in and log in and sync CarelinkGo. And that kind of like reduced the number of shifts that were being impacted.
Now, if you have a look in the history, we just have this repeat rows of this internal kilometres coming up, internal kilometres. It's rows and rows. We've provided that much information. Now, I get that. I still doesn't make sense to me that prior to upgrading last year, so version 19.3 or whatever we were on, that problem wasn't noticeable compared to after we upgraded. Now, I still don't. I get, Jane, is there something, and I'm still yet to have an answer.
Okay, I can follow up. I am aware of this particular issue, and I didn't realise that it had come down to the fact that the shift was approved and then the care worker synced and then it unapproved. So that sort of gives a bit more information as to what's going on. have you, Tracy, have you actually looked into that to see if that's what's causing the particular issue?
Jane, I've provided that much
Okay, okay, all right, okay. All right, let's take this offline. Obviously, there's a couple of organisations that have experienced it, and Melina has sort of identified some things that she's done to minimise the issue. But I'll have a look into your records too, Melina, and just understand a bit more about it. And if there's something that we can do on our side to, I guess, stop that from happening, I'll follow it up.
The only other thing I want to also raise is the duplicate mobile notes. Is there any update or what's happening is if you've got poor coverage, which happens to be some of our people in Melbourne, mobile notes that are entered are just duplicating like 6, 8 times, 10 times the same note.
As in CarelinkGo or in CareLink Plus?
The note is entered once on CarelinkGo.
Yeah.
And it duplicates in CareLink Plus a number of times, like it hasn't registered the note is already in CareLink Plus.
Okay, I haven't come across that particular issue. I'm not aware of that, but I can follow that up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, okay. All right, anyone have anything else they wanted to raise?
One other issue, which is not related to anything we discussed today, but is about notes, because it's prompted me, is that a lot of our users are always complaining that the app times out while they are entering notes, and then so they waste a lot of time re-entering or having to enter notes in a third-party notes app and copy and paste it back into Go, which is quite frustrating for a lot of users.
Right, is it that it tries to sync?
Don't know. The app just logs out. As if it's, like you normally got your 15-minute inactivity timeout. Even though they're typing notes, it still logs them out. Like they're technically active, but it's not recognising that they are active.
So like the activity that's in the text box is not recording it as activity, and therefore it just pushes them out.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, I'll follow that up too. That's not good. Into notes. Okay. In activity. Okay. I'll have a look at that one too. All right. Thank you, Matt and Nikki. Anyone else? No? All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks everyone for jumping on. We'll get back to you in the sealed space, and Tracy, I'll follow up on those issues you've reported and follow up on the other ones reported by yourself, Matt. Yeah, thanks everyone for your contributions today.
Thanks very much, Jane.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.
See ya. Bye.